The Auburn Tigers are spending so much money.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby. And thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Happy Charlie Tuesday to all who celebrate. We're joined by Auburn message board legend, the Charlie 5. You can find him over at the barn, auburn.com. Auburn basketball should sweep Ole Miss. More on that in a little bit. Is A-Day possibly in danger? We discussed that. But first things first, On3 put out a graphic, went semi-viral, of the schools spending the most money according to an anonymous source, which I always love. And Auburn led the way as far as how much money they're spending in the transfer portal, which isn't the most shocking thing in the world. No. But Auburn is throwing money around in a world where you're seeing, the Mizzou basketball coach grab the mic right before they beat Alabama a few weeks ago saying, don't storm the court. We can't afford it, essentially. Or even the Alabama AD saying, yeah, if folks storm the field against you, just take the win away from them. I mean, because nobody wants to pay this fine because nobody seems to have money, or at least there's concern about money. But then you've got Auburn out here just slinging it around because we want to win so bad. Is it worth it? I mean, that's the millions and millions and millions of dollar question.
Man, if you think about the top three guys you got to think those guys, all three have to be, combined probably, I would imagine, $1 million a year each one. When you talk about Jackson Arnold,
at least, yeah,
Singleton, and then Chaplin. I mean, yeah, I think the most shocking thing to me out of all of this is, again, and I know we've talked about it a bunch, but just the fact that people are still willing to spend that kind of money, on players when you haven't seen results on the field yet. It just kind of speaks to the alignment at Auburn right now, and probably why players don't leave, probably why, big time coaches come back. It's kind of cool to be on that. It's kind of cool to be on that list. That, hey, yeah,
I don't know if I saw this coming. Like, I knew we'd be competitive when it came to NIL. I didn't think we'd be like the most competitive when it came to NIL. And I know that's not fully what this means, but I think, and maybe the anonymous source also tied in the fact that, like, I think folks not entering the portal is actually the larger flex in all of this. I mean, there's a lot of talented guys on Auburn's roster that I'm sure that I know were reached out to by other schools, and Auburn kept all of them. And like that to me, there's a lot of flexes in this, but that's a big one.
Here's another one. There are schools out there that they may not necessarily have like tons of money, but they can, when they need players, they can just throw stupid money out to get one here or there. And like, I think in that same article, it talked about Texas Tech, how they just came in and completely screwed up the market. So not only did Auburn spend a lot, they spent a lot in a really inflated market because people were unloading cash, hoping that profit sharing goes through and that can fill up on the back end. So not only are you spending the most, but you're spending the most at the time whenever values are higher than they probably ever will. So it's like a double flex. It's like you're buying the most when it's the most expensive.
So, according to this anonymous source, Auburn led the way. Then it was Michigan, Ole Miss, Texas, and Texas Tech.
Get some, Dave Portnoy.
Yeah. Way to go.
Get some of that one. Michigan. Get some of that one, Dave Portnoy. How's that feel?
I know it. I'm just, once again, I guess there's two sides of this coin. But when I saw this, it's like, okay, this is awesome. Like, clearly the folks that are involved believe in Hugh Freeze, or they wouldn't do this, or they wouldn't
read those teams again.
Money.
Read those teams again, if you don't mind.
Auburn, Michigan, Ole Miss, Texas Tech.
Okay, so Michigan. You got Dave Portnoy, like incredibly rich. Texas Tech in that article, I think they talked about one of their big donors was worth like $4.2 billion, or sold a company or something like that for close to $4 billion. The crazy thing is Auburn doesn't have those guys.
Right.
Like Auburn doesn't have
or at least
those.
they're not giving money.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a ton of larger donations, but it's not like one. I don't feel like, I know everybody talks about Jimmy Rain and like he's got a ton of money, but he doesn't have like,
he's not the big player. Like it's anytime portal, everybody's like, go get him, Yellowwood. And it's like, I don't think
he is either.
He's helping, but he's not the
sure.
dude. Yeah,
for sure. I'm saying I think there's a lot more people. Auburn has to get a lot more people on board than some of these schools. Like Dave Portnoy was just ready to go say, okay, I'm going to spend, I think he said it, I'll spend $1 million or $3 million a year on a quarterback or something crazy like that, like willing to throw out multi-millions of dollars per class. I don't think Auburn has those guys, but they have a lot of, they just have numbers. I think they have numbers of passionate dudes that are, and females too, that are hungry and want to win.
Then the question becomes, okay, who's mobilizing all of this? Because it appears to be Freeze. It appears to be, somebody that at least, I mean, On to Victory's done a great job. We'll see what happens with that organization, like what happens when all of that goes to rev sharing soon, which you got to think it'll become even more streamlined if that's the case. But it's just kind of amazing to think about all of this, because like you can say what you want about Freeze, and like the first 2 seasons at Auburn have been extremely underwhelming when it comes to on-field production. But when you talk about
the field's been quite the opposite. That's what's crazy.
Which is crazy, and it's been it's been sustained that way. And can you do that one more time? I don't think so. Like I don't think you can have that same trend one more year. I think it fizzles out if Auburn goes 6-6 or worse this upcoming season. But
for sure.
I just think it kind of goes to show, like, for folks who are anti-Freeze, and there's a lot of them, both outside of Auburn and within the Auburn fan base. You can say what you want about the wins and losses, because, like, you can't argue that. Like, nobody's saying the last 2 years were good. But as far as, like, shaping a program, it does feel like he's done that. Now it's time. Now you're out of time. You've got to win football games.
For all of the ways at this point in time that you could screw a roster up. Like if you think about all the different ways that you can screw one up, he's kind of done quite the opposite. All the different ways you can lose folks, we've fixed that part. All the different ways we can add folks, we've maximized that. High school and portal, spring and winter portal period, and then it's just off the field, man. They kind of got it going on. You just got to have some on the field to pair with it.
And does this put more pressure on him? Probably. It probably does, because it's like, okay, if you go 6-6 at this point, it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing at this point? Why
am I giving all this money? Like I'm with you.
Right.
It's sort of a bargain you have to make. I'm going to go get all this. I'm going to make all these promises. I better fulfill them, because if not, I'm going to have some mad folks. And it's a large number of them too. Not just like one mad guy. It's a large number of them as well.
Yeah. And it could be one of two things. It's either you can't coach anymore, or you can't pick the right guys to pay money to. Has to be one of them. Has to be. If you don't do it.
Evaluation or development. It's one or the other.
Right.
Could be. And it doesn't seem like
especially a quarterback.
Correct. It doesn't seem like the defense has any issues. So, are we adapting with the times on offense? I think I don't have as many fears about the offense as others, maybe even you, just because of what I've seen in the past. But obviously it's sketchy right now.
Yeah. I mean, you're more confident than I am. Is that safe to say? Yeah.
Yeah, easily.
You're also more handsome than me, which is fine too.
No comment.
No, none needed.
I feel handsome.
Yeah, you feel handsome. You look handsome. You are handsome. Is 8A in danger? Let's discuss that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. Kyle, can you imagine playing daily fantasy sports anywhere other than PrizePicks?
I don't even know where I would go.
No.
How do you even do that? I can't imagine, because I just don't think there's anyone anywhere else.
And with PrizePicks, you can pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, it's easy, and it keeps every game exciting. And it's Tuesday. They have Taco Tuesday deals. PrizePicks offers weekly promos like Taco Tuesday, where you get discounted player projections for even more value. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, LOCKEDONCollege, for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Kyle, there's more and more chatter nationally, and it's starting to kind of, have Auburn folks asking the question, like, what's the future of Auburn's A-Day game? What's the future of spring games across all of college football? You're seeing more and more big name programs start to say, hey, yeah, this isn't worth it. Is it for some of the reasons that they're saying? I don't know. I have always been in the camp, though, where you're only allotted a few practices. I've always been surprised by how many coaches are fine just giving a practice away, because they're not doing anything worthwhile. Maybe you learn a few things at game speed, maybe, but you could do that in practice too. So I've always been a little surprised that in the current state it was able to count as a practice and coaches were just fine with it. The other side of this, though, is we just talked about how so many schools don't have money. And this is a prime opportunity to generate some revenue in the spring, but more and more schools are stepping away from it. Matt Rule seemed to have led the charge earlier this year when he talked about how, Nebraska's spring game was so good, it allowed people to say, oh, we want to tamper with all those guys, which I don't know if that's exactly the reason. I don't know if I'm buying that, but it does seem to be a trend that the spring games are slowly going away. Is A-Day in danger? I think it is.
I think if you want to experience an A-Day as close to they did back in the day, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you better go this year. I think this may be the last one that we have come to know as A-Day that's like it's been in the past this year. Think about this. Not only that, but you see Big Cat Weekend had to be moved into April. That's hard. That's your big recruiting weekend. Okay, so it's hard to get people to come to 2 of those, and then you got the distractions of A-Day in the middle of it. If July is going to be a dead period now, and April has to be your big recruiting weekend, the distractions around having spring practice and an A-Day, I can see where that could be an issue. But look, I personally, I kind of got laughed at. A-Day is sort of nostalgic. I think I'm gonna be sad to not have, the whole atmosphere. It's like a football game in the spring. You tailgate a little bit. You come do all the Auburn things.
I would miss the idea of A-Day more than actually A-Day. I mean, we hype it up for months prior, as soon as spring practice starts and all of that, and then it gets here and it's like, wow, this is really boring. This is really boring.
Sure.
But the idea of it has always been fun. It's like, oh, it's this oasis where we get a little bit of college football.
A little glimpse
in the spring. And then, we pick a few guys and we overhype. And it's like, yeah, he was incredible. And sometimes we're right. Cam Coleman was really good. He ended up being very good. But I'm with you. I'll miss it to some extent, both from a content standpoint and a fan standpoint. And it was just something to do, that was cheap and fun to take the family and all of that. And yeah, that seems to be trending, that it's eventually going to be taken away.
I could be wrong, but I think whereas TV, people may say, oh, TV, that you're giving up TV. I think TV actually hurt A-Day because it made it to where it was more of like a 1 hour production, like a TV show. And the game got watered down to where it wasn't even, it didn't even feel like a game anymore. It just felt like some way to pass 1 hour. We're going to have a running clock in the second half. We're going to do pass skeleton at the beginning. It just became like a TV show. And versus back in the day when you picked teams and you played an actual game and it felt like it meant something, like the winner gets steak and the loser gets, hot dogs or whatever. That's the way, Alabama used to do it. So that aspect of it, I feel like really started to take a toll.
Not a bad losing prize, though.
No, if you
we'd rather have steak for sure.
For sure.
But like hot dogs aren't the worst thing in the world.
No, it's a great consolation prize. Unless you can see somebody eating a steak while you're eating a hot dog, then it's tough.
It's like the worst case scenario is I'm having a hot dog. Like, okay,
it's win-win.
Right.
Count me in. No, I'll sign up for that. No, I'm just saying. I don't know. I do. I think I am going to miss the nostalgia of it. It's like, hey, that's a low pressure. That's a low pressure game to take kids to. Just hey, they want to run up and down the bleachers. You can do that. Some people. There was a guy on our board today talking about at the barn talking about how it's sad because that's one of the only games that he can make it. That's one of the only times he can make it to Jordan-Hare Stadium for certain reasons. And now that he's glad he came this past year, and he's going to try to come again this year because it may be the last time he can, or the easiest time he'll have an opportunity to get here. So, but for all the other reasons,
I think you could replace it with other things like Ole Miss. I mean, what in the world was that last year? They had like Joey Chestnut doing the hot dog eating contest. And I think they had some like musicians or something show up. And it was just kind of this like
festival thing. Like,
fan fest type thing. And like, you could do that. I think people would like it. But that's not what this is. Like, it's just, they're different categories.
You're going to have to create a new tradition. That's what you're going to have to do so you can still keep that fan involvement. Cause that's just a big fan time. That's for the fan. 8 days for fans. It's not really for anybody else.
Yep.
But for the fans, I don't buy into the injury thing. Cause I mean, we should just not have practice then if ever in spring.
Hate that argument.
I don't like that. I don't like that argument. And then the transfer portal thing, like the kids can still put their practice clips up. Like it's not like all 120 college coaches are sitting around the TV waiting for a spring game a spring game for Troy to pop up so they can pilfer their players. Oh gosh, I had no idea that number 34 was so good until I saw him in a spring game. That kind of thing. If those kids want to go in the portal, they can put their practice clips up. They can send practice film. They can do whatever they want to do to get it in the hands of the people that need to see it. I really don't.
It's also just like a worthless rep. Like who cares?
What do you think the ultimate reason is? Why do you not want to? Is it just?
I think some of it's scouting, and I think some of it is there's so much stuff that head coaches have to deal with now. Like, let's take this off the list. I think a lot of it's that.
And just start it in the summer and just roll with it until the season's over, and then you're just done, like the NFL for 4 or 5 months. That basically just call it off for 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, I think they should absolutely move it to the summer. I mean, especially if they're going to make the summer kind of a dead period for recruiting too. Like, I think that makes a ton of sense.
June 1st.
Do your scouting.
Memorial Day weekend.
Let player-led stuff happen in the spring, do strength and conditioning, like fully recover from the season. If folks got hurt week 7 or whatever, give them plenty of time to hurry so you don't have to rush them back for spring or even, early enrollees. Like, let's talk about like how this impacts those guys too. I mean, the early enrollees, because that's just going to be a nature of all of this now. Let them get their bodies ready before they're actually doing their spring. I mean, some of these guys that are like already gaining a bunch of weight, like that's awesome, but like, let's get them physically ready. And so they're ready to go in June. I mean, I think that would make it so much more impactful for everyone. And the college coach, the head coaches, they get to say, okay, we're not wasting any practices. This is what my roster is.
Do you think do you think that could discourage kids from wanting to enroll early?
No.
You don't think so?
I don't.
Just like, what's the point? You just get in here so you can
sign in December now.
Sign in December, enroll just to come work out, I guess, for 6 months before you actually practice. I thought the whole point of the early enrollee was to get them in so you could go through a spring practice and they'll get like that extra, that extra camp before you head into the season. I don't know. It's all going to be.
It might dissuade them some, but I'm sure coaches are still going to want them to sign in December.
Sure. I mean, sign. I'm talking about enrolling.
Yeah,
December,
I understand. I understand.
Yeah. I don't know. There's going to be.
I'm sure it would impact that. Yeah, I'm sure it would.
I'm sure there's going to be some like side effects of everything that happens that you don't know until you actually do it. But I don't know. I think it's 50-50. I don't think it's as bad. I don't think having a spring is as bad as they're making it out to be, but I see a lot of the arguments to just say, hey, once the season's over, let's just cut it off. Let's have an off
I
season.
liked the calendar a ton last year. I liked it a ton, but I understand why it's not sustainable.
Sure.
In my seat, I loved the calendar last year. If I'm a coach or maybe even a recruit, I get it. I totally get it. And they need to have the call on it. They're the ones that are making it happen. So
I'm with you.
Auburn basketball, they're making it happen. Do they sweep Ole Miss? We discuss in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. This is Locked On Auburn. Zach Blackerby, Kyle Rush here with you. Find all of his stuff over at thebarnauburn.com. Auburn hosts Ole Miss. Thank goodness it's a 6 o'clock tip. Cannot stress that enough. And I said this a little bit going into the Georgia game, where like I'm just not really concerned about it. And Georgia played a heck of a game until, you know, the final few minutes or whatever. I kind of feel the same about Wednesday's matchup against Ole Miss.
Yeah. Look, they've dropped 2 in a row. They lost to Mississippi State at home. They lost to Vanderbilt on the road. I don't know, man. I just don't have any. I don't feel very.
Their Final Four games are brutal too.
They are.
Tennessee, Florida. They should beat Oklahoma after they play us. I guess that's Saturday, but they're just in a tough spot.
Their last 3 are number 1, number 3, and number 5, and then Oklahoma. So it's. I just don't know. I like the matchup with Ole Miss. I just feel like they're not big enough to really limit us inside, and I don't think they necessarily shoot it well enough from outside, especially going to be on the road to really. You feel like if you contain, what is it, Padula, isn't that his name? If you can kind of stay in front of him, you feel like you can have a pretty good game.
Yeah, and
probably should be.
It
worried
also
about
felt
it
like a few weeks ago, Ole Miss was kind of trending up, and now it seems like they're in free fall right now.
Yeah.
Now the other side of this is, if you're Ole Miss, man, we can totally like right the ship and maybe move up a line or two in the NCAA tournament if we beat number 1 Auburn in Neville. I just don't think it's going to happen. I just have a hard time seeing that happen.
I just don't know where they beat. Like where's the mismatch? Like
where's the mismatch? Yeah.
Where's the matchup that they can take advantage of? I just can't.
Our 3-point shooting at home, which I think is going to fix it. I think it's going to fix itself. So
yeah, I do too. I just, that feels like the exception over the rule. The last couple of games just doesn't feel like us.
Janai Broom wasn't 100% when we played in Oxford either. I think that's going to be a factor. And I do wonder, the second half against Georgia, we started running the offense through Janai again.
Yeah, 53 points in the second half.
I wonder if they do that earlier in the game moving forward, now that it's like, okay, he's back. He's good. That ankle looks healthy. Let's see more Janai Broom moving forward.
Well, early in the game, he typically starts out at the 4. When they start the game. But what's funny is like those I feel like the beginning is when we typically go on a pretty good run over the last several games. It's like right after that first rotational switch, like where they start subbing. That's when we start kind of going through a little lull after that first TV break. That feels like when we kind of go through a little bit of a lull. I don't know. I think you've had people doubt you a little bit after the last 2 home games. I feel like people are starting to question, are you as good as you actually are? Oh, they're not beating people by 20. They're only beating them by 12. They must be not that good, not as good as we thought.
Don't get me started on it, man.
I know.
Just win. Just keep winning. That's all that matters. Unless it's Auburn, you got to beat them by 30, or it doesn't count. It's the weirdest. It's the weirdest.
It is so weird. It is so weird. Like, we don't talk nearly about the close games that Duke's had as we do. I feel like Auburn's close games, and I put close in quotation marks. It's crazy.
It's very strange. It's very strange, and like, just seems like whenever we trail to a bad team, that's like brought up, and then like Florida's trailing to LSU for a good chunk of the game, and it's like, man, they blew them out. And it's like, that's what our finals look like all the time. Like, what do you mean?
8 points. What are you talking about?
What do you mean?
Yeah.
It's very
Alabama.
strange.
Alabama was down big to Kentucky, but comes back and wins. But
yeah, I mean, at least Kentucky's good though. Like at
sure,
least
they're
like
not.
that,
They're not
that's a
LSU.
good win. Yeah, they're not LSU for sure.
I wasn't saying it was a bad win. I was just saying like it's the whole being behind and then coming back, and
Yeah,
you don't hear the. I just don't feel like we hear the same stories.
Yeah. Whatever. Well, give me a score. Give me a score for Auburn Ole Miss.
85-69.
Nice. I think I said like 80-70 on the show I did with Stephen Willis of Locked on Ole Miss yesterday. 80-70, I think. So we'll see.
I'll take it.
Kyle, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Absolutely. Find me at the barn, auburn.com.
Yes.
Take $25 off your annual membership. If you already have a monthly membership, you can upgrade and still take that savings. I don't know. I just found that out just a couple days ago. So, and then obviously anywhere you get a podcast, you can find the Top Button Podcast, but you need to go to the barn, auburn.com. You're going to have 3 baseball shows this week. That baseball show is killing it.
Popping off.
It's spectacular. Lindsey Crosby, Sonny D, Brad Law doing a phenomenal job covering the Auburn baseball team.
Is it safe to say that they're the 3 of them together are a home run?
They're a grand slam. Not quite a grand slam. You need one more for a grand slam, but they're 3-run homer.
Sure. There we go. Hey, please like the video. Please subscribe. And if you're listening on audio, please subscribe on whatever audio platform you're tuning into. And please leave us a 5-star review. Helps the show out a ton. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked on Auburn.